and thank you for joining another episode of And the Award Goes To, presented by Lee County Libraries. This month we'll be discussing the National Book Awards presented by the National Book Foundation. The very first National Book Awards were presented in 1936. That year, the awards were selected by a vote of members of the American Booksellers Association. Originally, there were 4 categories: Most Distinguished Biography, Most Distinguished General Nonfiction, Most Distinguished Novel, and the Most Creative Novel. Here you can see some of those very first winners, like The Personal History by Vincent Sheehan, The Circus of Dr. Lau, North to the Orient, and Time Out of Mind. From the awards beginning through 1942, it was awarded each February or March at the convention of the American Booksellers Association. It was initially open to any authors who published in the U.S., not only American authors. In 1937, the categories were limited to 2, favorite fiction and favorite nonfiction. Another category was added in 1937, Booksellers Discovery. This one was intended to recognize books that hadn't achieved their deserved success, according to the members. These categories were awarded until the awards stopped in 1942 due to the war. Back then, the prize didn't claim to award the best book of the year, only the favorite. They were decided with a simple vote of members of the association. Clifton Fadiman, the MC for those years, said, "In 20 years, we can decide which are the masterpieces. This year, we can only decide which books we enjoyed reading the most." In 1949, it was announced that the Book Awards would be reestablished the following year with new categories and new requirements. The categories were fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, and the main new requirement was that the awards would only nominate books written by Americans and published in the U.S. This is often considered the first National Book Awards. Eleanor Roosevelt attended the first reestablished awards. A separate panel judged each category and was manned by authors familiar with the works and the type of writing. The awards proceeded in the style until the mid-1960s when they began to add and remove categories. In 1954, they even had then-Senator John Kennedy as their keynote speaker. From 1964 through 1983, dozens of categories were added and removed. First, the nonfiction category was split into 3 awards, and then more. Some of these categories were arts and letters, history and biography and autobiography, science, philosophy and religion, and contemporary and general nonfiction. The comprehensive nonfiction genre was only restored 20 years later. In 1980, there were 25 categories awarded, spread between fiction, children's, poetry, hardcover, and paperbacks. One of the new categories was Books in Translation, which was even awarded to Virgil in 1973. In 1980, there was a strong drive by the committee to make the awards more public-friendly. They felt that only people within the book industry were aware of the awards and paid any attention to the winners. So they rebranded the awards as the American Book Awards in the style of the Oscars. They had awards for Best Jacket Design, Best Text Design, and other technical awards in the vein of movie awards. They even had a televised award show, though it was poorly executed and not considered a very good success. Finally, the awards were suspended for 1 year in 1983, and the committee was determined to rein in the excess categories. In 1984, the awards were once again open. They limited themselves to 3 categories initially: fiction, nonfiction, and first work of fiction. Then, in 1987, the awards were returned to the National Book Award title, and it was determined that there would be 5 finalists in each category. This is also known as the shortlist. Additional categories have gradually been added, such as poetry in 1991 and young person's literature in 1996. 2024 will mark the 75th anniversary of the re-established awards. In honor of this anniversary, there will be an essay published each month reflecting on the winners of each decade. The essays cover the books that won, but also the books that did not. This year's long list will be announced between September 10th and 13th. The finalists will then be announced on October 1st. This year's medaling ceremony will be on November 19th, with winners announced on November 20th. To check out all of this information, as well as read this year's essays, you can check out the website at nationalbook.org. Be sure to check back in next month for a new episode of And the Award Goes To, where we'll be discussing the Eisner Awards for graphic novels. Until then, this has been And the Award Goes To, presented by Lee County Library.